Turn that on. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, move on to a new page, maybe. How's that sound? I guess I'll move you, not the page. Oh, got my mug. Oof. That's what we'll do. Use more practice with that anyway, right? It's easier to do morning study when I had like a specific book I was copying, which I'll probably go back to soon. I just wanted to spend some time doing some other things first. Let's see. Make sure I don't bump into this cable. Scoot it out of the way. That might not be a bad pose. Just kind of toss that guy over there. Might be a good spot to start. Get a little larger. Good, more people pop in, which reminds me. Before I forget, right? Happy Monday. See if this will be any better. Good, more everybody popping in. Hopefully everybody's got a good weekend going. So that's got to come down here and over there. Foot there. over. Good morning. So, I heard there was a big sporting event yesterday or something. Did anyone's preferred franchise win or what? Well, there you go. Can't say no to $50, right? Never get enough pens, right? I can zoom in on the area I'm working on up here. Scoot over, get that down. Well, you might be able to buy a couple of eggs for that or something, right? Yeah, every little bit, right? That's what I always say. More than we had, less than we want, right? It's basic human condition. Is there any real difference between the Bolsheviks hyperinflating the currency out of relevance? The Bolsheviks hyperinflate. Which Bolsheviks? I mean, like under the Soviet Union or something? The Bolsheviki? I mean, that's a whole, the United States has been doing the currency, has been going on for a long time. That's a whole, like, animal related to, the creation of and legitimization of a fiat worldwide dollar system. The original. Yeah, I mean, like, it was funny. It's when Lenin took over Russia after the Tsars fell. He started doing all of his commie nonsense, and anyway, one of the things they found very quickly was it was very hard to get like a good, capable people into the right spots because they were paying everyone the same, no matter what. So you got the same whatever, whether you were a professor or a day laborer or a party member or a party leader. They paid everybody the same. So they quickly discovered they had to pay people or privilege people in different ways in order to get them incentivized to do more. Which is kind of funny. The other thing they discovered too was that the central planning is really, really hard. That you don't know how much of what you're going to need, especially if you have larger kind of production timescales. So if it takes a long time to grow stuff, you don't know how much you're going to need, right? So if it takes you months and months to grow some wheat or potatoes, you don't actually understand how much you're going to need necessarily, based off of even just last year's production scales, especially when you don't have any prices on anything. So if you don't know how much people want, which is determined by what they're willing to pay for something and when they're willing to pay for it. They ran into this problem. So one of the things that Lenin discovered was something he called Novaya Ekonomika, new economics. And so what they did is they allotted people a certain amount of property out in kind of where the farms are outside the cities. It was like a small, half acre, quarter acre size lot. And whatever they could produce in that lot, vegetables or mushrooms or fruit or whatever they wanted to produce there, they could sell it and keep the value of it. It's called New Economics. I don't know about you, but that sounds a whole lot like basic economics, right? Anyway, I think that food source alone, the people privately producing food and selling it by themselves, during the life of the Soviet Union, produced, I think, something like a quarter of their food. They discovered that capitalism and distributed networks could do a better job of feeding people, even in small scale, when compared with the massive scale. But that was an important part of their whole food production system, was privatizing a large sector of it the other thing that they did too was because it was the production process was entirely controlled by central planning, and they couldn't really have true prices in the United States. They're based off of what people are willing to pay. So when Apple sets a price for an iPad, it's a combination of production cost, what the materials and the labor and the shipping and all the little layers in between, and then what they think people will pay for it. So it's kind of a blend of those two things. And well, you don't know what people are willing to pay for things if you don't have true prices. So they don't have true markets in the Soviet Union, because communism is anti-market. Like you don't really have pricing structures. So what they did was because they did have the ruble as a kind of medium of a general exchange, they used Sears catalogs as rough estimates for value exchange. So what they charge for a pair of pants or a suit or coffee mug or whatever was based off of the prices they saw in American catalogs, because they had no kind of internal way of figuring out what things cost, because they just made stuff. Which is just kind of insane, if you spend a few minutes thinking about it. It's like, how can you base an entire economic, social system on this? Ostensibly for certain purposes, and then but not be functional at all. Yeah, well, that was the joke in Soviet Union, was if you saw a line, you got in the line. Didn't matter what you thought might be at the end of it, because they could run out of it real quick. It could be bread, it could be something you could keep for a long time, something canned. So they would just randomly show up, and you can't plan your life around that. And it's one of the reasons it kind of held them back so much over there. It's like everybody there was an engineer. Like you kind of meet people from there, from that time period. Like everyone had an engineering degree, but it didn't really mean very much. And then really what happened after the fall of the Soviet Union, which is why some people kind of idolize Stalin, want to kind of go back to that. I don't think in enough numbers to make it happen, but there are those that are kind of interested in it, and it has to do with the fact that when Soviet Union collapsed, really what happened was they didn't transfer to a market economy as much as they transferred to an oligarchical one, where small numbers of people acquired most of the capital producing industries. And so you got this kind of huge growth of that as a result. And it's part of why things are such a mess there. I think it's at least in Russia itself, it never had a democracy per se. It was starting to have one under the Tsars. So the Tsar, what's his face, Nicholas, he was well. The other thing, but one of the reasons why that happened with the oligarchs is that Americans came in and Westerners came in, and they would kind of manipulate that around to their own favor. Which is one of the reasons why there's so much hatred for the West, coming out of Russia, why they don't why they maintained their adversarial status. It's not just that Putin is a bad guy, sure, but the reason why he's able to manipulate things is because of Westerners coming in and manipulating things. Consolidating power the way that they did. Yeah, but yeah, Nicholas was in the process of basically turning the monarchy into more of a symbolic power rather than a monarchical power, kind of like what England did. And it was kind of intended to be a bloodless transition. The reason why the Marxists took over, why Lenin was able to come in, was because during World War I, he was sent in a secret car, a sealed car. He talked about that because he was in prison in Germany, and basically he was because there's a lot of people there are a lot of people that were into communism in Europe and other places back then. The workers and things like that, and so basically Germany, as like a weapon of war, they sent in Lenin to be kind of this intellectual nuke. And so they secretly sent him in where his people greeted him on arrival and was able to launch his revolution. And then the armies of Russia, the Duma and that, they could never get themselves organized properly. They could never get organized properly, right? So they basically that should connect over there. That should connect there. So like each army would be kind of commanded by a general, but they would never really work together on the White Army side. And as a result, the Bolsheviks, which Bolshevik, by the way, means majority, which they never were. The White Army, for them, they call them the Mensheviki, the minority, Mensha. So where is that hiding at? Nope. Yeah, but but they weren't able to kind of get organized enough to actually repel Soviets. And so they kind of just gradually lost. Actually, American soldiers fought on the White Army side, inside of Russia. I can't remember the size, like 10,000 or 15,000 troops or something during World War I were sent over to fight off the Soviets, the Bolsheviks. So the United States has invaded Russia in the past, which is kind of interesting to think about. It's nothing that shows up in our typical history books, but yeah. So, of course, John Quincy Adams, he worked out of the embassy when he was a little kid. He was sent by his dad there as well. So there's kind of a long history with the United States and the Ruskies. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting that that perspective that we don't often kind of factor into decisions that are being made when you know you can imagine it, if Russia ever invaded the United States, that would be a big deal on like our part of our curriculum forever and ever and ever. Like it would be something we'd be hyper aware of. Um, so um, but I think it would be helpful, people to pay attention to those things because if we're not aware of that as being part of our history, our shared history, it's kind of a big deal to kind of be ignorant of that. Let's see, pencils up here. Oh yeah. Yeah, but yeah. So I think it's interesting the way, well, really the way any country approaches their history. So I know it's like you watch the news here, and it always feels like whatever somebody else does that we don't like, or the United States feels it has to kind of intervene in. It feels like the way they talk about it is if it just started like yesterday, like the same day they started talking about it, rather than an ongoing issue that's been running for a very, very long time. Whether it's the Ukraine war, or relationships with the Saudis or Afghanistan, or whatever. It always feels like someone just like woke up and was like, oh, there's a terrible thing happening right now, and bears no resemblance or relevance to anything that's been going on for a very, very, very long time. Yeah, it just seems like it's like, oh, now we must respond to this terrible thing, even though it's ongoing, and the things that we've done may have been the things that precipitated it. It's like makes it very hard to have discussions with people too who have very strong opinions, because they seem to be completely unaware of that, or they just don't care about what's been going on, and they're suddenly shocked by what's happening now. It's like, I don't know, seems like this should have been top of that priority list to understand what's going on now in reference to what we should do about it, or shouldn't do anything about, or whatever it is. It's funny just because of the way, as a artist, professor, but also the background that I have. In addition to that, I kind of walk between, these political circles, because I have friends and family and colleagues and that kind of float on different sides of these issues, and it's funny how all the attitudes can like shift on a dime. As soon as there's a transfer of authority or power. It's like people getting upset over the Trump executive orders, but I remember when Obama came in, he's like, oh, you just have a phone and a pen, and you can take care of a lot of things that way. Yeah, it's like the current egg price. It may be somewhat related to the inflation that's been going on. Yeah, just as this reminds me of the idea that Trump is some kind of fiscally responsible conservative. It's just kind of silly based off of his last presidency, compared to other parties, right? But like the egg price thing, the summertime, when people were freaking out about groceries, that was definitely due to inflation, to which both parties have been enthusiastic supporters of when it comes down to it. But that current inflation was definitely due to the price inflation is definitely due to the inflationary activities of that presidency, the Biden presidency, and then the current prices that are going up has more to do with that bird flu and the culling, which is a separate thing. But you can mix the two together and you've got a problem. Now I go to Costco and they say, oh, you can only buy so many eggs. You can only buy one carton at a time. Yeah, well, like, Greenspan, he's a funny one, just partially because, his history with Ayn Rand, which I think we may have talked about in here before at some point, but you know, like she would not have approved of anything he did, ever, probably. I think this leg is twisting too much. Should be seeing more of the front. See the knee there, and the front of the shin there. But yeah, and then, and of course, the history of the Federal Reserve is quite unnerving when you look into it. It's like we gave the United States handed over the power of the currency to one private bank that's a cartel of different banks. Yeah, it's a government-backed monopoly, which is funny because we're not supposed to, theoretically, you're supposed to tear down monopolies, but this is one that was directly created, around the same time that they were breaking up other monopolies. Yeah. Greenspan was in her group that's called the Collective. Probably partially why he was chosen by Reagan was because of that credential, because she would have still been alive when he was Fed chair, or at least evolved. I think so. I think it was under Reagan he was installed. Maybe it was under Elder Bush. But yeah, but he was definitely in her inner circle. Yeah, I think I also saw a student. I had a couple emails from students asking for extensions over the weekend. And okay, there you go, Reagan. Yeah, so Reagan was ostensibly a free market guy, sort of. He's probably more than say Carter was, but maybe not. I mean, Carter, he deregulated much of the transportation industry, which is one of the things that made say flights a lot more affordable. So airlines used to have to provide a bunch of high-end services, and one of the things that he did is in his presidency was he pushed through changes in regulation that let them provide more basic services, so you could get your economy flights and that, which made air travel a lot more affordable for more people. Which is funny because that's not who you would think he would be. Same with trains and shipping and things like that. He deregulated a lot of that stuff to make it more accessible to people. Though he's also involved, with the changes in the regimes in Iran. The Shah wasn't a great guy or anything, but he was better than the the religious leaders were. So there was that. The larger reasons why he lost had to do with the malaise under his, the inflation that was going on, the recession that was ongoing. Some of his less tactful statements, like telling people to wear a sweater, if they can't afford heating their homes or whatever. And then, of course, there's the hostage crisis that was ongoing as well. Mix all those things together, and just things aren't going to hold up very well for you in the long term. But what are you gonna do, right? Yeah, I was a baby when that stuff was going on, so I was born in '78. So, my parents definitely remember all of that. I have no memory of it. I grew up '80s kid, but yeah, I would love to see cheaper gas, though. I mean, it would make a lot of the things that I want to do a lot more affordable with my my truck project. Being able to say travel out west. I'd like to do an epic trip this summer, and I've got to put together some paperwork and things. I want to apply to a bunch of different residencies and things. Like there's one in Alaska that I want to put in for, and it's due beginning of March. There's one I want to apply for that's due the end of this week, actually, so I need to get back on that. Um, yeah, if you're into comic stuff, have you watched the Ink Pulp podcast? I'm trying to remember the guy's last name, Sean, but yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of the tail end of the Gen Xers, so I have I think like 78, 79 or something like that is usually what they count as the last year of the that generation. But I'm not sure why they do it that way. I think it should be like the children of a generation. So like my parents are definitely baby boomers. My grandparents were World War II vets and Greatest Generation types. Um, so all of my siblings would theoretically then be Gen Xers, but yeah, Ink Pulp podcast. It's I forget Sean. Can't remember his last name right now. So he's not someone I'm as familiar with. He ran the SCAD I think he started the SCAD sequential art program. He doesn't like them either, same as me. He's long since left them behind. And then it's what's his face who does well, there's I can't remember their names. It's they're all really big deal comic artists. The other two, at least. There's Eric Canetti and the other guy who did some stuff with where's his name? Is that his name up here? Let me see. So he did this Mr. Freeze book, One Bad Day. Yeah, Matteo Scalera. Eric Canetti and Matteo Scalera. Eric is kind of, he bounces in and out of comics. He seemed to do a ton of commissions on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, whenever he's posting. They're all Sean, is it Boyle his last name? I can't remember. Let's see if I can find it real quick here. But I've been talking with Sean a little bit just because we have that shared SCAD history. But they interview tons of people. Sean Crystal, there we go. Sean Crystal. And I think he's had a hard time ever kind of having the comic actual career launch for him. I think part of you look at his style, it's like it's really good, but it definitely doesn't have the same kind of broad appeal that his co-hosts have, Matteo and Canetti. Canetti mostly does concept art. Yeah, everyone should know Matteo Scalera. He's really great. He's Italian. Yeah, so they interview different artists or have discussions there. Yeah, so that's who's kind of yeah, a student emailed me over the weekend, and I was like, I need to train them so they know that I don't really want to talk to them over the weekend, unless there's like a major like health emergency or family emergency that they think I should be aware of. So a couple people email me about project extensions. I'm going to answer them once I get done here, because today is Monday, and I like to work on my own things over the weekend if I can. I did do a little bit of like teaching related stuff where I was working on the illustration track, but that was kind of more of like a moment of inspiration, moving some things around based on some feedback I got from people. Yeah, I have his One Bad Day book back there. And I have the Chrononauts that Eric Canetti did. That's that Terry, what's his face? Terry, I think it's Terry, right? He does a lot of YouTube videos. Terry Moore, right? Is that who did that book? It's not one I've ever read. He does a ton of YouTube like videos on like how to do hand lettering and setting up pages and materials and all that good stuff. So I've watched some of those. Yeah, Terry Moore. Yeah, he's got a pretty active YouTube. He's not, he doesn't get the watches. Like he's really, super chill guy. Just let me talk to you about what I'm doing. Yeah, but definitely check out that Ink Pulp podcast if you're looking for some cool discussions. People talking about the business side of things, the issues they run into with storytelling. Sean's kind of shifted over to professionally being kind of a tattoo artist. He's kind of finishing up his training doing that and starting to do his own tattoos. I think he's in his 50s. And tattoos are definitely, I think, a place where people definitely want them. I have a handful of students that are into that. I knew a couple, actually, a married couple, classical artists, and they got into like high-end photorealistic tattooing and make a much better living than they did as painters doing that, which I get. It's not something I want to do. I just, the idea of like drawing on sweaty people just doesn't strike me as being particularly attractive as a profession. It's like being a dentist, right? You spend a whole bunch of time with your hands shoved in other people's mouths, where they're breathing and spitting on you. It's I've never quite understood the attraction, but it's a whole culture thing too. So with the tattoos at least. Dentistry, it's more of probably when they get into it, it's more of like, oh, well, this is a good way to make a living, which they're definitely right about it. Well, the Sean Crystal, he's got like a teaching site. So I think his Ink Pulp website. It's kind of it's how to like be. It has like a bunch of tutorials and lessons on how to do comics, and he's definitely a good educator. He's very good at talking about things and explaining them. He's never kind of said who, so I don't think he'd mind if I said this, but he said you'd be shocked by the number of modern big name comic artists that are starting to use AI in their work. They keep it on the down low because it would probably ruin their reputations as artists. Because that's part big reason people go into people are interested in comics is because they're the art and the artists. They want to. They're looking at getting these high end, very expensive now, individually crafted drawings and issues and things like that. But with the state kind of the comic book industry's in, a lot of people are using cheats, I guess, to advance their speed. Separate from that, though, it was funny, Eric, if you listen to Eric Canetti talk long enough, like he is all about the labor theory of value. So he believes that the harder you work at something, the more valuable it is. Which is, if you know anything about economics at all, or why people value things, like that's completely false. Like that's not where value comes from at all. Value is always subjective. There is no, it's built into the word itself. There's no objective measure of value other than the last price that was paid for something. Well, the thing is, I think the AI thing is it's worse than like a shortcut. It's like this weird crutch that breaks your legs. 'Cause as soon as you become dependent on something like that, you kind of you lose your own voice. Which is I would call definitely a tragedy. Um, but that was something he's commented to me. He's like, you'd be surprised the number of people, people you wouldn't think of that are using it. I think it's like it does engender kind of a certain type of thoughtlessness. So I think it will be pretty obvious who's using it eventually, because they'll start leaving mistakes in and not realize it because they're just in a hurry to put something out there. But I found I've kind of tragically discovered that there's people that I've run into that I assumed kind of shared the reasons why you go into arts, is develop that craftsmanship and that individual voice and all of that, and I've met a number of artists over the years where it's all just strictly a financial experience for them. All they care about is ROI on everything they do, and I just think that's kind of sad because there's other business opportunities that are way easier to work with where that makes a lot more sense. It's not that artists shouldn't be concerned with efficiency or profitability to a certain degree, especially if that's how they're trying to make a living. But if that's like your main or one of your top considerations for the things you're doing, I mean, there are way easier ways of just making a living doing something than trying to get people to pay for drawings they didn't ask you to do. Or find people that are willing to pay for them. It's a weird attitude to have, to want to be able to do that. It's not that you want to be lazy or thinking about things. Yeah, it's like it's maybe the worst avenue to take, because you have to either have some kind of pre-existing audience, especially if you want to be an indie person, or you have to wait a very long time for things to get popular. You look at Jeff Smith and Bone. He's making really good money now, between library editions and Kickstarters and things like that. But there's a lot of long, lean years between now and then that he had to go through to kind of enact his vision. Yeah, so it's just kind of a weird way of approaching things. That if you really want to make money, go into financial planning or accounting or be a dentist or something. Make your your bank, retire early, and then do comics. Hit your 50s or whatever. If you can figure it out and be a lawyer. I did sign up for something interesting yesterday. Apparently, I thought it was just for people that were on my phone network, but I guess it's worldwide for anybody that wants it. But they're putting together a beta Starlink for phones that I guess launches this summer, I think is what they said. I'll have to double check the notes on it. Something I saw before going to bed. I guess it was announced during the Super Bowl that anyone on any phone network can get Starlink. As long as you have a Sky, you've got a connection. Which that's going to be a huge thing, I think, going forward, if that kind of continues. That sort of celestial connection. But for me, just in terms of my own kind of streaming practice in general, that could mean that I could live stream a plein air painting from the woods or something, as long as I had an open sky, not too many trees overhead blocking, which could be fun. Let's see, something up with that lower lip. But 105, alright, so I'll probably grab some white paint to touch things up a little bit. Yeah, well, it's like, I had started looking at, I hadn't too seriously considered it because it just would cost more money than I want to spend, unless we can get like 1,000 subscribers on my teaching site. But I had thought about getting one of those Starlink setups, because you can turn it on and off. Like, you don't have to have it on all the time. So you pay for the equipment, and then you can pay by the month. So if I knew like I had a month where I was going to be out every single weekend or whatever, that would make it worthwhile to pay for it. And I imagine there's going to be speed limitations or whatever with the initial phone thing, right? There'll probably be like speed or data limitations of some kind. But I could see that going away in a couple of years too. Same with cellular networks. When those first launched, you had all those limitations on them. You couldn't send texts for free originally. Now it's like, you just send them. I still remember the first text messages that were sent to me, because I didn't actually get them. I didn't have a text messaging plan. So I was like, what do I need that for? I've got email, right? There was some girl I knew. She was still in college. I had just graduated, but she got really mad at me because I didn't get her texts. Doesn't happen too often, but I had no idea she'd sent any text to me because I didn't have a texting plan. Why would I have one of those? I think it was very disappointing. She's since been married a couple times, so. Probably dodged a bullet there, right? Well, everyone remembers the YouTube forced download. Remember, Apple's like, we have a special gift for you. Everybody has a YouTube album in their library now, automatically sent to all of their devices. And people are like, wait, what? You're putting data on our devices without asking us for permission first? That was a major PR disaster. I mean, it's like, it wasn't a very good YouTube album. It was fine. I remember that one. Yeah, because YouTube really hasn't been the same since, for me at least. I haven't really liked much of what they've done since Achtung Baby. Yeah, they had a few, they've had a few nice things here and there, but it wasn't quite the same level that they were doing up to that point. Funny, I'm drawing this ear over here. I had to educate my students on the structure of ears the other day. This independent study student, she had kind of drawn the interior structure of this ear like completely wrong. It was like a sideways weird angle thing. Yeah, I don't know that they've ever quite recovered from that. Even if people don't remember it, I don't think they've been quite as popular as they were at that point since. Yeah. It's like Rattle and Hum, Joshua Tree, was it the Under a Bloody Red Sky or whatever it was called? Awake and Alive in America. Like, there's all these like great albums, and then I've noticed like a lot of artists, they hit a certain age, all their work starts to get really kind of bland and tepid. So I thought it was smart of like REM to quit while they were ahead. But I get it. The machine show must go on. So I just think if we have that kind of money, you might want to try other things. Well, I'm going to call it there. I got stuff to do to get ready for today. So thanks to everybody that came in. Appreciate it, and we'll talk to you later. See, stop.